Bikesh Yaakov legalas es haketz. At the end of Yaakov Avinu's life, he called his children together to share with them this piece of information, knowing when Mashiach is coming. Chazal tell us that Hashem took away his Ruach HaKodesh, and he didn't have that piece of information to tell them. The sophisticated learner wants to understand what is it that went on between Yaakov Avinu wanting to share with his sons when Mashiach was coming, and Hashem saying no. Hashem saying it's not the right thing to do. What's the back and forth? As if there's some sort of difference in Ashkafa here. I heard from my Rabbi Yitzchak Berkowitz Shlita such a beautiful explanation. When you talk about the concept of Emunah, it's not so much that we struggle in our life with knowing that everything is going to be okay. It's more that we struggle, we want to know when everything is going to be okay. Yaakov Avinu felt that the goal and the avodah of living life in this world is to know the end, is to know when everything is going to work out. And Afal Pikein, within that framework, work on ourselves, to be close to Hashem, work on our midos, work on our tefillah, work on our Torah. Hashem said, Yaakov, no. Klal Yisrael is going into Galus. In Galus, precisely the avodah is to not know when. To not know when things are going to be okay. Whatever struggles and difficulties a person is going through in their life, the hardest part of it is not knowing when it's all going to work out. If you speak to a person in Shidduchim, it's not that they can't find someone, it's that they don't know if they'll ever find someone. If you speak to a person who doesn't have children, the hardest part is not knowing if they'll ever have children. We want to know that the things that we're going through, we want to know not that they're going to work out, but we want to know when they're going to work out. And if we know that, it makes it so much easier. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells us, HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells Yaakov Avinu, no. In Galus, the avodah is, Afal Pikein, even though you don't know, to work on your midos, to work on your tefillah, to work on your Torah, and to stay close to me. And by way of doing that, you build a relationship with Hashem. And within that process itself, is precisely how you develop the closest to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That is Emunah.
This week, Klal Yisrael suffered a terrible loss, and Klal Yisrael is reeling from the loss of a precious Ben Torah, Chaim Dov Ben Zion. And certainly we're all turning and grabbing a hold deep inside of ourselves of Emunah, of trust in Hashem, the faith that Hashem runs the world, and the understanding that Elikaya Reimemeka, when Midas Hadin strikes, being Miraimim, that Hashem's Miraimim Mikol Machshava, tapping into Emunah. And appropriately this week is the topic of this precious forum is Emunah, and all the lessons of Emunah should be a Eloi for this precious neshama of Dovi Brody, this precious Ben Torah that we've lost. We say in Tillim, Lahagid baboiker chasdecha ve'emunascha baleilos. Lahagid baboiker, in the clear times, the mornings, to relate the kindness of Hashem, the job of a Jew, to thank Hashem and appreciate the kindnesses of Hashem. Ve'emunascha baleilos, and the difficult nights, the times we don't understand, hester panim, to have emunah. But there's a fascinating subtlety in the language. It says, Lahagid baboiker chastecha, it should follow, uvaleilos emunasecha. But it says, ve'emunascha baleilos. And David HaMelech's teaching us that if we thank Hashem for all the good things daily that He bestows upon us, then the emunah is in place already before the Laila. That is the secret to acquiring emunah. Thank Hashem for all the goodness that He's constantly giving us all. Notice them, appreciate them, be thankful for them. And then, when the Laila comes, when the difficulties, the challenges of life strike, there's times Hashem needs hadin and we don't understand, but the emunah is already in place, will then merit and be zaycha to emunascha baleilos, to the emunah being in place when things happen that we don't understand.
Frequently quote the author of Nevarduk, who says that B'tochen is a feta top, which are translated as a bowl of whipped cream. And when you're handling a bowl of whipped cream, you can't avoid sticking a finger in just to give it a little taste. People who hear about betochen just can't avoid giving it a little try. And there are many, many levels of betochen, and Rabbi Avram ben Aramam talks about it at length. It's very hard to go through life without some betochen. But there's certain areas when betochen is quite easy for everybody. When you have no choice, then betochen is easy. Betochen is difficult when you have choices to make and you feel it depends on you. Then it's hard to have betochen and not to act on your own behalf. But when you have no choice, it's much easier. For example, the Mishnah Berurah says that in one area he speaks about being machmer on something, and he says you should have betochen, it'll be all right. In the halachas of Shmiras Haloshen, in the Chofetz Chaim, he says also in one place about not to take revenge and talk lashon hara back against somebody speaking against you. He says because you have betochen. So the strange thing is, how can a person be told to have betochen? Betochen isn't just something you turn on that everybody should do. You have to work on acquiring the meat of betochen. The Teretz is that if you hold it's usher, you have no choices. If you have no choice, so then you can't do it. How do you survive when you can't do it? Inside yourself, you are full of anger and recrimination and desire for revenge and everything else. So the bad feelings are soothed by having betochen. Betochen is going to take them, it's going to go away. It's just temporary. The branch is not going to let you be harmed. All the fears are nonsense. And how do you know it's nonsense? Because Mishnah Berurah says, or the Chofetz Chaim says in that sefer, that you're not allowed to do it. That's it. You have betochen. One of the ancillary, let us say, things that come out from this type of a thought is that when sometimes you have a problem, if you can find some halachic ramification that has to do with this problem, you know how to solve the problem. I tell the story of a young woman who was close to my wife, and she wanted to have a hashpah on her brother who lived in Florida, and she set up a wonderful Shabbos for him with meals by different dynamic rabbonim in Manhattan. And she gets a phone call on Friday while he's coming in from Florida by plane from his non-Jewish girlfriend, who tells him that her child broke an arm and he's in the hospital and he should immediately come back to comfort the child and be with him in the hospital. And she called me. The sister who had arranged the Shabbos for him called me up frantically. She was frantic. She said, what should I do? If I don't tell him about the phone call, later on after Shabbos, he'll find out about the phone call, be very angry at me, and all the work I did in setting up this wonderful, inspirational Shabbos for him will be lost. Because you'll see, I abused his trust in me. And if I do tell him, he's just going to turn around and get on the plane. I'm going to go back on Shabbos. The whole Shabbos is lost and go back to Florida on a plane. What should he do? She asked me what to do. A very simple answer. You can't tell a guy to do something or permit him to do something. You can prevent him from being Mechal Shabbos. So I said, don't tell him, and you will see that after Shabbos it'll be all right. How do I know the last part? The last part is because if you do what's right, it turns out right. And that's why everybody can have a shaychus to betochen, to know that if you do what's right, it turns out right. And that is a betochen, that's not a very hard betochen to acquire. Of course, there are much higher levels of betochen. But when you do what's right, you can rely that it's going to turn out right. And that is a level of betochen as well. I wish you all growth, endless growth, in Emunah and in practical Emunah, which is B'tachon.
There is a saying that seeing is believing. One of the biggest challenges of Emunah is that it's very difficult for a person to believe in something that they can't see, something that isn't tangible. It behooves us, therefore, when working on Emunah, to try to find something that's perhaps almost tangible. In Tehillim, in the Davar Hashem Ori, it says, If there will be a war waged against me, through that I will find bitachon. The question is, what exactly does that mean? Simply, one might say that anytime there's war, a person's afraid for their life, a person's afraid they may lose everything, they find Hashem, but that's not what the pasuk is saying, if you look closely. It says, Im takum alai malchama, just the fact that there's a war being waged against me, bezos ani boteach, the fact that there's a war causes me to have bitachon. The question is, what exactly does that mean? I saw an answer given that explains that the war that we're referring to here is not the war between one person and another person, or one country and another country. Rather, it's the war between us and our Yetzer Hara. And he explained with a mashal, if you have two towns that are separated by a forest, and the forest is inhabited by thieves, so if a person who has valuables wants to get through the forest, they have to hire guards so that their valuables aren't taken. Someone who doesn't have any valuables can walk through the forest without worrying that anything is going to be taken. No person who has valuables will say, woe is to me that I have someone who's out to get me, because the fact that there's someone out to get them tells them that they have something valuable. Similarly, if we're in touch with ourselves and what's going on inside of ourselves, the constant inner struggle that we have, this Yetzer Hara who's constantly pushing us to see certain things, or to look certain ways, or to do certain things, what does this Yetzer Hara want? Why is he constantly after me? Why is things so complicated? The answer is that it must be that we have something that he wants. He wouldn't be putting in so much effort if it wasn't for the fact that we have something valuable. We find self-awareness can help us in many situations. The Chovas HaLevavos describes that when we stand Shmona Esrei, we're suddenly inundated with thoughts that we never think of otherwise. Did I remember to lock my front door? Did I leave something in the car? Did I pay my taxes? And the reason for that is that the Yetzer Hara at that moment puts all his efforts in, even though it's not natural. We have all these thoughts that are not natural. He puts in all his efforts to try to get us to prevent us from being close to Hashem through this Shmona Esrei, from connecting to Hashem. It's these moments of self-awareness that help us and allow us to understand what's going on inside of us. This struggle that we have, the inner struggle that the Yetzer Hara is constantly out to get us, it tells us that it must be we have something to believe in, we have something valuable.
One of the biggest problems I hear about Emunah is that I don't know 100% if Hashem exists. Now, I'm going to explain how this makes absolutely no sense. Basically, that is based on an equation called probability equals reality. Okay? And this basically goes that the more probable something is, the more real it is to us. Okay? So if you have something that, is probably there, so then it's real, right? And the less probable something is, then the less real. And since I only know Hashem, let's say 99% after all these proofs that they gave me, I still have some questions or whatever it is. So therefore it's real, but it's not 100% real. But I want to tell you today that this is a bunch of garbage. That does not define our reality. And I'll prove it to you, okay? You're sitting on a chair right now, okay? Now, why are you sitting on a chair? Is it because you know for sure that you are sitting on a chair? You may say, yeah, of course I'm sitting in a chair. What else am I sitting? You don't know that. It's probable, but it's not 100% probable. It's highly probable, but it could be that you're not sitting on a chair. It could be that you're sitting on a projection from some outer planet, or it also could be that you're sitting on a CIA extractor, information extractor, which is stealing all the combinations to your locks in your house and your bank from your brain right now, and they're going to steal all your money. So you better be careful. So how do you know what you're sitting on? And the answer to this is that it's okay. Because in our world, reality is not defined by probability. It's defined by probability and importance. That's all we care about. And even if something's not 100% probable, the more important that thing is, the more we make it real. So, a chair, you've been standing the whole day, and you're very, very tired. You need somewhere to sit. So now that chair just became really important to you. So even though the probabilities may not be skyrocketing, to you, you're going to treat that chair as if it's in reality because you need it badly. So it's a mixture of something that makes sense. Probabilities are the chair is just the chair. It's not information extracted from the CIA. And also, it's very important. When you have a mixture of those two things, that's what we consider our reality in this world. And that's how you know your parents are your parents. Your parents are your parents not because you know 100% that they're your parents. You don't know. You never did the tests and the gene tests and all that. It's because it is important to you. I want love in my life. I want my parents to be my parents. It's very important to me. It's practical for me to have parents in my life. So, and it's also very probable. So a mixture of those two things on high percentages, that equals our reality. So what we have to work on in Emunah today is not so much the probabilities. It's pretty easy to learn that. You can learn it in a day. You go to a seminar, you go to Rabbi Mechanics, you'll see that there are very, very high probabilities, crazy high probabilities, like 99.9% that Hashem is there and that Yiddishkeit. But what we have to focus on more is how important Yiddishkeit is to us. How important Judaism. Without it, life is nothing. When we start realizing how important it is and how probable it is, then we start treating it as if it's a chair. We have to make Yiddishkeit as real to us as a chair exists. That's the level of Emunah that we should be able to reach in our lives. Thank you.
I want to focus on one prat, one detail of Emunah, and that is when we have a situation of a mitzvah, a nisayon, a test, that we feel we're going to give up, we're going to lose if we follow the Torah, we listen to the Ratzon Hashem, whether it's a business deal that we may lose out if we're honest, or any other opportunity that we feel we're being denied by the Torah. We have to remember a pasuk, Shaimrei mitzvah le'yedid avara, that someone who keeps the mitzvah will not know anything bad. One will never lose out by keeping the Torah, by performing a mitzvah. On the contrary, a person will gain. We're coming close to the Yontif of Purim, and I think this is one of the central themes of Purim. Mordechai did not bow down to Haman. What happened? Right now it's great. We have a big Yontif. We celebrate Mordechai's a tzaddik. Mordechai brought us the salvation. But if you looked at the story, at that time it did not appear that way. Because Mordechai did not bow down, Haman became angry. Haman said, I want to destroy all the Jews. So at that time, I don't know what was going on, but most of us would probably have been not so happy with Mordechai and said, Mordechai, what did you do? You caused destruction on the entire Klal Yisrael. On the opposite end, everyone had joined the Suda of Achashverosh, and everyone probably thought, oh, this is great for public relations. We'll go to his party, we'll enjoy ourselves, and Achashverosh is going to like us. But in Shemayim, the exact opposite was going on. Because they enjoyed the Suda of Achashverosh, they were chayav destruction. In Shemayim, because Mordechai did not bow down to Haman, HaKadosh Baruch Hu and that Zechus said, I'm going to save Klal Yisrael. Even though there are times where it looks like following the Torah is going to cost us, so to say, we have to remember that HaKadosh Baruch Hu running the world. When we do what's right, things will be good. When we don't do what's right, even though it looks like we're going to make a lot of money, it looks like something's good coming to us, but really, it's the opposite. V'nahapachu, the lesson of Purim. It's the opposite of what you think. If you follow the Torah, you could be confident, you could have Emunah, everything will be good. If you don't, then you're putting yourself at risk.